Hey everyone, welcome to the Trendcrusher podcast. I'm Peter K. On this episode, I've got Brittany and Austin from Rwake. They're back after a 13-year gap with a new album, The Return of Magik, which is out this weekend on Relapse Records. Before we get to my chat, I'd like to play a track by a band that has become a favorite of mine in recent years, Kardashev. The band announced their upcoming album, Alunea, with a single Reunion, so here it is.
From the past
and that was Kardashev with Reunion of their upcoming album Alunea. Longtime listeners will be very glad to hear that this album is actually a direct sequel to the events on their earlier album, The Almanac, and actually picks off where the song Beyond Sun and the Moon leaves off. Stay tuned for more from Kardashev. Now let's get into my chat with Brittany and Austin from Wake. Here it is. Hi, Brittany. Hi, Austin. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Okay, now since it's two of you and this is audio only, so why don't you go one by one introducing yourselves and what you do in the band?
My name is Brittany. A lot of people call me B. I do vocals and soundscapes.
Yeah, my name's Austin. I'm the newest member of the band. Been playing guitar with them for a couple years now, and very happy to be a part of it.
Awesome. And, I must say also welcome back to Wake because it's been, I don't know, and this has been one of the things that kind of puzzled me because I didn't realize it had been 13 years since your last album. And then I saw suddenly an email pop up about your new album, The Return of Magik. So I'd like you to go first, Brittany. Did it really feel like it's been that long? Like over a decade?
No. The older you get, the faster time flies. And just days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months, and months turn into years really fast. So no, it has not felt like 13 years at all. But it has because and 'cause that's how time works. But yeah, it's definitely flown by.
And what about you, Austin? I mean, because you're one of the newest members of the band. Uh, I was actually listening to another podcast where uh, Brittany and Jeff were kind of talking about how you came to the band. But since I have you on the podcast, tell me what it was like for you kind of joining the band. I mean, this was way before, I believe, there was an album on the cards, or was there an album on the cards and you kind of joined in?
Yeah, so when I was asked, there was already an album on the card. So B will probably get into it later, but there was already a very strong like template of an album ready to go. So when Jeff asked me if I'd be interested in jumping in and joining him, it was basically the statement was, "You want to join the band? Play this show that we've got upcoming, one of the local festivals we have, and also help us finish this album, and then go into the studio and record it." Like that was all kind of ready to go and lined up when they asked me.
Oh, wow. That sounds quite something. I mean, also in the chat that I heard, I, I believe it was you, Brittany, who were kind of talking about how Return of Magic was actually the initial bass parts were written by Jeff. So one by one, what was it like when you all first heard the initial portion? I believe it was just the bass drums that was there. What was your reaction when you heard what we now know as the Return of Magic, Brittany?
I was there from the creation of those songs that Jeff wrote. But yeah, he did guitar, bass, drums, all of it. And so I was able to hear it all being written. So it wasn't just kind of like presented to me in the same fashion as like say like Austin got it presented to. Um, so. But I just couldn't wait for us to all be able to come together and build off of what, that he had written, build off of that and turn it into, what it has become today. I mean, as soon as it's just so inspiring, when you hear something that's, that just sounds so great. It just makes you really eager to be able to, start laying some tracks down on top of it.
Okay, that's interesting. What about you, Austin? I mean, considering now you had this entire album as something that would be part of what you're going to be playing live, what was your initial impressions of the album?
Yeah, to me, it felt like I was getting a peek behind the curtain, like a sneak peek, because I was a Wake fan before I joined them. I met Jeff just like weeks before Rest came out, the last record, and was just blown away. That was my first introduction even to this kind of like realm of genres. And so I went and watched every live show that they played around our parts, and was just absolutely a huge fan as soon as I first saw them. So whenever I got to hear these, kind of like the demo versions of what became the album, again, it felt like I was seeing a peek behind the curtain, and I felt really honored to get to see like the creative process before the final process. And yeah, I loved it. I loved everything I heard, and it was really exciting to be a part of it to what it is now.
And, I wanted to kind of ask this question later, but you know what? Since I have you on the chat, Austin, one of the things I noticed about the press release that came with the promotion uh, talks about your addition to the band, adding your shredding solos along with, the progressive thing. Uh, how was that again presented to you? I mean, was it given saying, here's the music, now you add your part? Because it was a very clear thing that, even in the chat that I heard, that you're a far more technical player, right? Uh, so what was that kind of going into the recording or jamming before that also?
Yeah, so there wasn't anything like that kind of like laid out black and white, like this is what you're going to contribute. It was really organic. Like B was saying, like just being all together in the same room. Um, I felt pressure only from myself, but not from the band. I felt a lot of trust, that they let me bring my ideas, and also know that I wouldn't get mad if I presented something that maybe they didn't feel was the best fit for the song. Then we would discuss it and have healthy conversation. And, because we all are very passionate about wanting the best out of the music. And so, and there's plenty of stuff that I brought that got changed, or we decided there was something better. And, I don't think my feelings got hurt or anything like that. So, I really enjoy our dynamic, and I didn't feel any pressure besides just from myself, coming in with like, this kind of, these it's like a cult band that has all these diehard fans, and so there is some expectations, and there's some, fun live experiences of my first show of people were unsure of how it would be with, a younger guy coming in, 13 years later from the last record, and with a lot different influences. But I think all in all, once we were all together in the room and could kind of bounce ideas off of each other, it started flowing really, really seamlessly.
Yeah, and like I guess it's really lucky too that we have, two guitar players. That I wouldn't really say that there's like one lead and one rhythm. I think that's a little misleading. Because most of the guitar players are constantly playing something different from each other and stuff like that. And so I would, John was just so happy to be able to get to play with somebody else, so to have somebody else to kind of feed off of and stuff like that. So to say, like I guess the PR is a little, misleading in saying, like a lead guitar player, because I feel like we really have two lead guitar players, um, and which is great for both of them to be able to feed off of each other's creativity and to make sure, to that, like I said, always constantly playing something different from each other, and working with each other instead of, just like, here, I'm going to support this, when I think of like a lead and a rhythm, it's like one person's just supporting someone else, but I think it's really an awesome dynamic and teamwork the way that they support each other.
Yeah, and having the chance to actually listen to an advanced copy of the Return to Magic, I know exactly kind of what you're talking about, right? Because what also kind of occurred to me when I was listening to it, and it makes sense while I was listening to chats while preparing for this, is it's an entire kind of, how do I call it, movement of sorts, right? And
Yes.
the fact that
Yes.
when I heard the fact that the music came to Jeff, he talked about like writing it over a 5 week period.
Hmm.
It's interesting because I keep hearing this from a lot of musicians, right? Where the music comes to you. You can't kind of sit in
Yeah.
front of your instrument and just like write it out. It just comes to you, and you just need to kind of be there to kind of channel it through you of sorts. Uh, since there was like two distinct portions, I remember in the chat you all talked about, right? Where in 2018 he had, over the 5 week period, the initial ideas, and then you kind of worked on it remotely in 2020. uh,
Hmm.
Considering y'all were kind of putting together this music after a portion of time, one of the questions I always have for musicians is, when do you realize you're really done kind of writing and then move to the studio? Or was it something that you all took to the studio and said, there's still stuff that we'll write there? How do you all kind of work? What is
So
that
the songs
dynamic
are
like?
Yeah, the songs are never done. Like the songs are never done. Even though we've tracked them, they are still not done. We will still take those songs, we will grow and we will change those songs, especially once we start being able to play them live. That's when you really start, like putting in the final pieces to me, is once you start vetting them, live. But yeah, a song is never done. And so with this record in particular, we set a date for the studio, and then we still had a lot of writing to do as far as like building layers, and stuff like that. And I guess we're really fortunate that, because we don't write music for a specific audience, because we only write music for ourselves, it doesn't limit us. There's no limitations for us. We haven't painted ourselves into a corner to where, like, this is what we have to do. It's essentially limitless. And so, when we all get together and we're all playing and stuff, it always grows, and it'll always continue to grow. It and I think that's, vindicative for most like really good bands, is like, you don't sit down and go like, okay, well, we're going to write a song and this is what it's going to sound like, and this is the audience that, or what will the audience think, like, I think the audience will love this. It's like, um we don't create music, we literally just channel it. The earth speaks, and when we're lucky, we get to translate that into, voice and sound. And so for it to end, to say like, okay, this song is done, it isn't ever done, because the earth's always speaking to us, and it's always growing and changing. I think, there is a point though when you're, like, for the studio, we put a date down. I was like, okay, we need to tighten everything up by then. But if we could have had more time in the studio, I'm sure those songs would have grown even more. So yeah, there's never a time when the writing process is over. It's always, because of the way that, we write, that, it's never over. It'll always grow and change and become better over time.
Okay, you said something, and I was very curious about, is you don't write for an audience. So hold that
Yeah.
thought. I definitely want to double tap and ask you more about it. But at this point, what I want to do is, considering just the time that has passed, right? It's been 13 years. If you look at it, you know, there's so much that's happened. You've got streaming, you've got digital services and stuff like that. Uh, what would you say? So it's pretty obvious that there's a completely new audience that'll be discovering Wake through this album. So keeping that all in mind, um, what would be a track you would like someone who's never heard Wake before uh, to listen to from the latest album?
I think the track 4, Distant Constellations and the Psychedelic Incarceration, I think that's a very good. Uh, I think it really tells the story of who we are as a band, and it takes. We wrote the record from beginning to end to be one piece of music, right? Like, we're long form music listeners and writers. So. But if I was to just take one piece of music out of the record, I don't even really like to call them songs. If I was to take one piece of music and be like, okay, this sums us up, it would definitely be track 4, because it has everything that, that I want out of music in that one track.
Okay, and just a heads up, since Brittany said they're long form musicians, this track is 13 minutes, so here it is.
I believe that youth is the wealth of the world. But sadly, so many today are lab rats per se. They've become chemistry majors seeking chemicals, and in dire need of a miracle. For now they have become incarcerated in a do-it-yourself psychedelic jail cell deep within their own minds. Like a heavy mental meltdown, they have become derailed and have lost the trail that leads them back to themselves. I hope you can see that being lost in their very own, out-of-service, very nervous breakdown and shakedown from hell is the reason why so many have become freaked out and shot off and got off too much in their inner minds too many times. So instead of an epiphany, it was more like insanity. You might say that some are so lost in their dementia that they never come back. They're either become catatonic, in a coma, or dead. So if you're picking up what I'm laying down, you will see that the best of the rest have found that it can be very expensive to want an extensive school of hard knocks streetwise education. For the cost to the lost for their participation is the inevitable and terrible psychedelic incarceration.
In our universe, there is no constant solidity. Forms that appear to be solid are lost in tranquility. A result of vibrations, the elements of light. A crystal flower, a child of power. Composed by the universe, a symphony of light. The witch's insight, a magnetic delight. The infinite spectrum blinds us from the night. And it's sung into creation, sung into frequency. Receiving new ground, like flowers from Christ and prayers in the night. Divine transition, the night and past, magnetic reaction. Pulse ascends, unblood empires, galactically bend. Stars interacting, a higher frequency for a higher energy. Divine infinity, ascending creation, ascending tranquility. The plan inevitable, irreversible ascension created ineffably. A story began, before we existed the shockwave ascends. The turning of seasons, arrival of springs and birds will sing. From the side of the crucifix, transfixed on all
All right, that was Wake with Distant Constellations and the Psychedelic Incarceration. I've got Brittany and Austin from the band here. Now, it's interesting that you say, you'll write music for yourself, which is, I feel, again, something which is very distinct about metal musicians that I see. But I think it also keeping in line with what we've been discussing so far, right? I mean, um, if you think about it, you're also making music against Instagram or whatever social media platform, which is trying to, limit you down to time limits of 30 seconds, 3 minutes, what have you, right? You're writing 13-minute songs. And again, like you said, it's not even an individual song itself, right? It's an entire piece of music that's composed together. Uh,
Yes.
how is that philosophy you feel kind of stood the test of time? Because you'll have been a band for many decades now. And I'm keeping in mind just, people who listen to doom, sludge, progressive music are used to kind of this. Uh, how has that been over the decades for you? I mean, we've got someone who actually listened to you before he joined the band, Austin here. So I want to get his perspective also. But if you could kind of chime in on that, Brittany.
So, I mean, I think that was, a decade or two ago, I think it was a lot harder for people to kind of wrap their heads around that, like not only the songs always being so long, but there just being so many different genres of music all within one song. I think that was like I said, it was a lot for people to kind of to wrap their heads around previously. But I think nowadays people uh, are because of scroll generations, if you're constantly just, I mean, I think it's honestly affected people's attention span, and while you would think, that that would go against us having, 15-minute songs, I think because it changes so much, and because people's attention spans, have changed, I think they're actually able to listen to a 15-minute song because of its constantly changing and going, and if you give yourself a chance to, like to go on that journey, it the journey is it'll carry you through the entire 15 minutes. I mean, I feel like even the record in itself, like when you put the record on, an hour goes by and you're like, it's hard to imagine that an hour just passed. I get that feeling, and most of the people that we've shared the record with, can, mimic the same words, that, it was just like it was over before, they knew it, So I think the long form music, because of the way that the ebbs and flows and the dynamics as a whole, I think it works, to our advantage with people's attention spans nowadays. uh, but it does make things hard, like, even when we were just trying to pick out, what song to do a video for, you're like, the first director we talked to was like, you're wanting to do a 12-minute video, like they thought that was insane, but then you've got people who just really get it, and so the director that we worked with, he was like, I love it. That's so crazy that y'all want to do a 12-minute long video that's mostly lit by nothing but fire, and I'm not allowed to use any lights, So it's like, it takes a certain person, to be able to, kind of understand what we're trying to do. But I think it works, and it works now, I think, more than it ever did. As just people are just more open-minded nowadays to, and they're not so genre specific in what it is that they're trying to listen to, and people are, have more diverse tastes and stuff, and at the end of the day, I mean, you can't deny when you listen to that record that it's not like anything that you've ever heard, because of the amount of changes, it within, each piece of music itself, and then as a record as the whole.
What would you say, Austin, as someone who kind of went from a listener to being part of the band?
Yeah, I think people appreciate authenticity in art. And that's for me as a fan of the band, a decade before I joined them. that's what I appreciated about the music, and then getting to know them, joining the band, about their like philosophy for music. So like they said, we're long form um, listeners, and I include myself in that. Even I still love to get albums and listen from beginning to end. And sometimes when I pick a song in the middle, it feels wrong. I need to start it all over and listen from beginning to end. Um, but I think people appreciate authenticity, and to me, when it comes to art, there aren't rules, and I feel like boxing yourself in because maybe it's expected to do shorter songs isn't the way artists should approach it. To me, it's like if you want to paint a mural, a big giant mural, but limiting yourself to a small canvas, like why would you do that? If you have bigger ideas and have more emotion to give. And to me, that's how it is with the music is, with this record is it's not that the songs were written to be long for the sake of being long. It's that there was more story to tell. And that's where it felt like it naturally needed to go. So yeah, I think that's what it is. Authenticity will always prevail as a music fan. Whenever I'd rather artists swing big and miss, but be truly wholly themselves rather than intentionally box themselves in to fit like a standard or expectations. And I think people see that too.
No, I totally agree. I mean, like, honestly, I feel, and I keep joking with a lot of like bands who play grindcore, that their
Uh-huh.
music is
Yeah.
basically for Instagram or TikTok, right?
Oh
Because
yeah.
they're writing that.
Every song is like 3 seconds long, and yeah.
Right, but and it beats me how that kind of music is not popular on like short form kind of these platforms. But jokes aside, right? I mean, I think what you say is totally right because a lot of music, and especially if you look at, I see a lot of people now going anti a lot of the algorithm and stuff like that. I totally resonate with what you're talking about because I grew up also in a time in India where, you know, we didn't have a lot of metal, right? So you had to kind of discover it. And while now you have, your Spotify editors or playlists and stuff like that, you had friends who would kind of recommend music through tape collections and CDs to you. So that's how you kind of heard of various bands. Okay, and another topic I was really curious to talk to you about and kind of discuss is, and I'll add some context to this. I grew up in a very conservative Catholic home here in Mumbai, India, right? And this is in the 90s where, of course, there was the entire thing around metal being, Satan's music and stuff like that. Uh, and I was listening to a chat you did, Brittany, where you all kind of talked about growing up in the Bible Belt and how your music was actually just the total opposite of what y'all were kind of growing up or y'all were seeing around. Um,
Yeah.
could you kind of share a bit more about that? Because I'm very curious to hear, and I'd love to hear your perspective also, Austin.
So, I mean, yeah, I mean, growing up in the Bible Belt, in the 80s, or even, I mean, it even got worse before that. I don't know if people really realize how oppressive it still is to this day. I mean, you can't buy alcohol on Sundays. You can't even buy a car on Sundays because of churches. So, I mean, that's crazy. Like, you literally cannot buy a car on one of the only days of the weekend. And so, you know, when we were kids in the 80s, there was literally towns that banned MTV. Like you could not, MTV was not allowed. And so I don't think people, it's for people from other places, I don't know if they can really truly grasp how oppressive, it was for us growing up. You would get, if you were a guy and you had long hair, you would get pulled over by the police. There's, towns where they would take you to jail for no reason, and then you weren't allowed to go see the judge until you cut your hair. I mean, like, uh, and this is happening in like the 1990s, in Arkansas, where most people would, just can't believe that that really happened. So yeah, so for us, when we started playing music, like teenagers and, early 20s and stuff, a lot of it was just a response, to our collective poverty and oppression. It was like we really needed that outlet, um, because yes, I mean, not only, just for the way we looked, let alone, you start talking about the music, we were all, going to be going to hell, you're all going to hell, and, and, so it took a lot, it took a lot of willpower to, to stand up for yourself, and not just to stand up for yourself, but to stand up for yourself and, your friends and, to defend the things that you believe in. And that's how we all kind of came together, is through our, through our collective ability to like stand up for ourselves, in the middle of being, so oppressed. Uh, and so yeah, like I said, I think it's really hard for a lot of people to understand, from the states, how how oppressive it really is in the South to this day. I mean, so me being a metalhead and being a female, I was like, two strikes against me, like uh, because unfortunately, you know, part of, and this isn't even just the South, but unfortunately, the US history, says that, Black people are less than, brown people are illegal, and women are property. And that is so ingrained in most people's, psyche from early childhood that for them to even, think something other than that, it takes a ton of willpower, to see past that. But it was, like I said, it was that's what kind of brought us all together, as kids was, us, our love for music and our love of standing up for ourselves, like being able to stand up for ourselves and be like, no, I'm not going to, you know, I'm going to create my own path.
I mean, I know you're younger, Austin, but what have your experience been like?
Sure. I mean, I was raised in the church in a, smaller than the town I'm in now, but still here in Arkansas. But I will say I'm fortunate that because I am younger, I think I got to miss a lot of the worst of that. Or at least I had some really great parents that helped shield me from any of that. Although I was raised in the church, the first metal bands I ever saw were performing at church and were like Christian metal bands. There's actually like at least back in like the 90s and 2000s, there were a handful of pretty popular Christian metal bands, and it was pretty popular in this area. So I think I got to miss a lot of that earlier stuff. So by the time I was getting into this genre, um, it was a lot more accepting, and they were starting to like incorporate and accept that, well, if we want to reach the kids, we got to start accepting some of like the more high energy and aggressive music, but put like a positive message on it kind of thing. So a lot of the local Christian metal bands that some of us are even still friends with are were my like kind of transition gateway into like heavier and then like secular metal and things like that. Um, so I'm, I don't have as gut wrenching and heart tearing stories as probably the rest of the band. But I think it's honestly, I would say it's probably because of people like them that have made the positive changes in our area that heavy music is a lot more acceptable now.
Yeah.
I didn't have my parents like, they don't understand it, and maybe even still to this day they don't, but they never made me like feel guilty or like I never felt threatened for uh getting into heavier music. And yeah, I've just fell in love with it, and I'm very lucky.
Well, and I
No,
think
so
the rest of us are very fortunate in that our parents were always really supportive of us,
mm,
as well. And I think that's what allowed us to be
mhm.
able to stand up and say, like, wait a minute, this isn't right, is because, our parents were very supportive of us and what we were doing. And so we were very lucky in that aspect, that we didn't have, that that we didn't have that kind of oppression within our home, um, but as a community as a whole, as a state as a whole, yeah, it's a lot worse than most people could imagine for what we're talking about was just 40 years ago,
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, like,
or 30 years ago.
yeah. So to Austin's point, I actually remember now, and I don't know why it kind of comes because I think I've also kind of compartmentalized the Christian metal bands. But I remember, like, I don't know. Do you all remember how the entire thing was that Creed is a Christian metal band and they were so
Mhm.
mainstream? And I think,
Right.
like, in the turn of the 2000s, the most popular because there was new metal. There was a band, or there still is a band actually. I was surprised they were still around called POD, Payable on Death. And they were like, again, the positive metal and using rap and things like that. So, like, if
Yeah.
you went to Limp Bizkit, an alternative was POD, right? And I don't even know if they considered themselves Christian. I can't remember. But having said that, there were other bands. God, for the life of me, I can't remember them. But there were, again, new metal bands and stuff like that that were very popular in the early 2000s that were Christian. I don't know if they still consider themselves or it was one. I mean, I remember there was a Christian metal label, Tooth and Nail, if I
Tooth and
remember.
Nail and Solid State Records were the
Yeah,
big one.
yeah. They were the big band. So, like, if you liked any one song, and I think that's typically how most metalheads kind of discover new music, right? You listen to one band on a label, and then you kind of follow
Yeah.
a lot of those. So I think that's what happened. Wow, I can't believe I'm like suddenly discussing Christian metal from what we were initially kind of talking about. But that was some phase, I think. Okay, and now swiftly kind of moving away from Christian metal bands. One of the things I was very curious about also, and considering, we brought up Arkansas a few times in the conversation. Um, One of my favorite bands actually is also from the region. I think you're familiar with them, Paul Bearer. And I think there's something again about their music that they just build that entire atmosphere. Uh, I think I can't remember which album it is, but there was one of the albums that they released around COVID or right after that, which I literally felt that that was the album that defined what that year was for me. Uh, I'm forgetting right now, but if you could kind of talk about like some of the bands that you'll have kind of seen. I mean, they may not be from like say progressive or doom metal, but which are some of the bands that those listening to the podcast you think they should definitely hear?
So as far as like bands that are playing to this day, or are we talking about in we can go back 40, 50 years?
I'd say let's stick to current bands.
Okay. Uh, so we're very fortunate that that we have a really good scene actually here in Arkansas. And there's some really great bands that have not made it out of the state very far. Dead Bird being one of them. There, it has multiple members of Wake, previous members and current, and they're absolutely amazing. There's a band called Crankbait. And they've been around for actually even longer than Wake has. And, we've been playing together for almost 30 years. But Crankbait's absolutely amazing. Um, and so that's a band that I think a lot of people, should try to check out. Uh, but as far as any other local bands that are, just that never really got their due, there's a lot of bands out of Nashville, like John, a lot of John's previous bands that are absolutely amazing, whether it's, like Third Degree Burnout, Social Animosity, uh, uh, Laser Flames, they're freaking amazing. That's out of Nashville. Uh, but those are all bands that that never really got their due, their day in the sun that I wish, would have, because, they put in the work, and they were always doing something that's, that's new and very authentic. And I wish more people would get to, revel in that.
What about you, Austin? Any bands that you want to?
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to narrow it down. For one, because because I am younger, I didn't grow up with the same group of bands and the same kind of scene as everyone else did. And right now, there seems to be new bands popping up in this area. I mean, almost every day, and they're better and better. I mean, I we're playing our record release show here in town, and we've got a few bands like Sea Hag is playing with us, and they're friends of ours that are an awesome like sludgy band. I mean, they're I mean, B can tell the timeline, but I think they've been playing as long as Wake has, or almost as long, or and Morbid Visions is another band that we're playing with. They're like a local death metal band. They've been doing a couple tours with like Crowbar and stuff, so they're actually starting to really pick up. And then a younger band called Little Rock Massacre (LRM) is opening the set. They're all like high schoolers that are playing like traditional thrash metal, like just guitar plugged right into a tube amp, turned all the way up, and just shredding and playing as fast as possible. And they're really cool. But yeah, Zilla is a local like punk rock band that some of us are friends with. That is just you see them play live and they're just absolutely wild, tearing the house down. I mean, there's so many local bands. I mean, the first metal band I ever got a CD for in the area was Living Sacrifice, which was a or still is a local like Christian metal band that's on one of those labels, Tooth and Nail or Solid State, something like that. And so they influenced me way back in the day, before I even knew they were from this area. But yeah, there's too many bands to even name. I mean, I'd recommend people not sleep on Arkansas and really look into the local talent that's here.
Okay, and before we get into talking about your album release and stuff like that, this question is actually more for you, Brittany, because I heard this in the previous chat that you all had done, where I remember, if I remember well, Jeff and you kind of talked about the reason behind your break was a lot of you were having kids. You all wanted to spend time bringing up your kids. So this is just a general question, and I always ask this because I have a 7-year-old son. Is did your kids ever know that y'all were in bands during this break, and what did they think of it? But also now that you've got music coming out and stuff like that, like are they like, oh my God, our parents are pretty cool, they're metal musicians? What are their thoughts on the music in general?
Well, so I have a 20-year-old son. So we were touring when he was a baby. But my 13-year-old, we took a break when I had her. But as far as music, I mean, our house is covered, excuse me, in show posters and stuff like that. We have a jam room at our house. So us and music has always been a part of her life. She knows. Now she didn't get to go to her first Wake show until she was like 11 years old, maybe 12 years old. And while she'd already always heard our music and stuff like that, if to her it was always like super lame. And so it's funny like watching, like, Slayer was such a huge deal, for at least Jeff and I, growing up, and so, I remember one time we were sitting at the kitchen table, and Slayer's playing, and Tom does, one of his screams, and she just starts giggling. She's like, "That is so cheesy," and we were like, "Oh my gosh, she's saying Slayer's cheesy! Oh, that's blasphemy!" But then you're like, I don't know, was that kind of cheesy? Now that you're laughing about it. But so while it's not her genre at all, and or anything like that, she really does enjoy going to shows. And because we got such a wonderful community, like when it comes to like the metal community, everyone's just so loving and abrasive, of everything that that it's you can't not feel all that love, and so she really enjoys going to our shows now because it's such a positive environment, like people are just so happy, everybody's hugging and everybody's it's just so great, um and so she really enjoys it now. As far as the music goes though, like she's like, no, I'm good. But she does enjoy going to the shows and stuff. But yeah, she always knew because we had a jam room, like she always knew kind of what was going on and stuff. So but yeah.
No, that's interesting because like the first time I think I took my son to a concert was he was 2, so
Hmm.
he kind of naturally gravitated to the drums and the bass and stuff like that because they kind of get
Yeah.
that. But last year I took him to his first hip hop rap concert, and the main reason I took him for it was actually he's been listening to some of that music,
Yeah.
and one of the things here in India, just because concert going is not that huge a deal, right? You see a lot of crossover happening, and I saw a lot of like my metalhead friends at the concert, and they were like, "You got your 7-year-old to this concert?" I was like, "Yeah." They're like, "You're the coolest dad." I was like, "Yeah." I mean, he was more into it than me, honestly. But it was just fun to see him in that entire kind of atmosphere, right? So I'm definitely looking
Yeah.
forward to taking him to one of his first metal concerts that he can kind of remember. Uh, but it's just strange, kind of, when I think about it, like now he has choice. When you said your daughter found Tom Mariah cheesy, I was just like, wow. I'm mentally prepping myself for something like
Yeah.
that happening. Like, what really is that guy screaming about, Dad?
Right, and because she loves music. Both of my kids are absolute, they love music, huge music fans, constantly have headphones in all the time. And my daughter, she plays drums, actually. But yeah, her tastes are considerably different, but she still has very diverse taste. But when it comes to metal, she's not there yet. She's not there yet. She just not yet.
No, so my last thing on the topic, right, is you remember that teenage angst? I mean, you were talking about it, and
Yeah.
both of you were talking about it, right? I was like, so being a good parent is inversely proportionate to your kid getting into metal of
All
sorts.
right. Yes. Oh, yes. I totally see how it
So I was
correlates.
like,
Correct.
okay,
Yeah.
do I need to be the strict dad for him to be like, screw the system and all of that,
Right.
listen to
Yeah.
metal?
He needs a little more oppression in his life just so he can get angry. He doesn't have anything to be angry about yet.
But
Yeah.
cool. But I mean, since just transitioning in, right? Because you talked about your daughter going to metal shows and being for the Wake shows. I'm guessing she'll be at the album release that kind of Austin talked about and the bands that are playing. Considering, and I didn't realize that actually you'll are now spread across the country. Uh, are there plans for more shows other than the few that you'll have announced already?
So, at the end of the day, there's no substitute for playing live, like playing music live. I mean, it's pure catharsis, right? It's like this balance of like deep presence and transcendence, Um, and there, we lose ourselves, we get carried like to another world, and like the magic is complete when the audience comes with us on that journey. It's like there is no substitute for that, so we, we want to play as much as we can. We just have to be really smart about our, what we do, because, some of us still have young children at home. Mine are getting pretty older, but but some of us still do have young children at home, so it makes it hard. Um, so while while we'll review any offer that we get, everything just has to work. Everything has to line up right for us in order to be able to do it. Uh, 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 because not all of us are in the position, to be able to just, go, and tour for like months like we used to. but at the end of the day, that's I love writing and creating music, and I love playing music even more. And especially considering I have to do like a lot of the business in the band, it's like if I don't get that emotional reward, like getting to play these songs for people, it to me it's like we have to counterbalance like all of the work that goes into it with that emotional reward. um so like I said, like while we'll review any offer that we get, it just everything has to make sense in order for us to be able to do it. That
No,
was a
fair
very
enough.
political, yeah, it was a very political answer. I was like,
No, no, fair
it's
enough.
just,
And I mean, that's one of the things I feel we're seeing. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, right? Post the pandemic, you saw this entire, like every band was releasing new music, uh, old band, new bands, and then you saw everyone touring, and now you're just seeing over the last year or so, just touring costs going up and like everything's going up. I mean,
yeah,
it's one of those situations also whether you're in the US or you're sitting in India like me, all across the board we're seeing inflation happen, right? And
correct, yeah,
it's absolutely crazy. So I totally understand where you're coming from. Uh,
yeah. And having six members doesn't help, like, transporting six people, feeding six people, things get hard, it's like,
yeah, I
so
can't
yeah,
even like imagine that. That's like a large family of sorts.
yes, yes, very, very large. Like we're almost a baseball team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I did again, correct me if I'm wrong. I did remember hearing that one of the things that Jeff ended up writing as the initial parts um, for the Return of Magic was two separate hours of music. Um, are we going to see more music from Wake anytime soon? What's next for the band?
Yes, we've already got the foundation for three songs ready to go. And hopefully, with the new record coming out, that'll afford us more time together to start crafting those songs and getting the next record ready. I mean, we definitely don't want to wait 13 more years to put out another album. Um, so so yeah, we've already got a really good head start on the next record. And again, so hopefully with this new record coming out, that'll afford us more time together to start working on those songs and developing them more. Because while my favorite Wake song that we've ever written is on the Return of Magic, my next favorite Wake song we haven't even started building yet. And I, like, but we've already got the foundation for it, and it's absolutely amazing. I personally cannot wait to start adding layers to that and getting that song where it's recordable, because like it's even it's on in the same league as Distant Constellations and the Psychedelic Incarceration. So I cannot wait to start working on this new stuff that we've already got the foundations for.
So awesome times ahead for Wake. Quick question I always enjoy asking bands, and let's start maybe with you, Austin, and also get some picks from you, Brittany. You said you constantly are listening to music at home. What's currently on your playlist?
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. So one of my favorite bands that at least has not got any credit here in the U.S. is the Physics House Band. They're absolutely amazing. I don't think they're really playing music anymore, but they're from I think UK. But yeah, the Physics House Band, absolutely amazing. I suggest everybody to check them out. They have a really a really diverse catalog. So I would suggest I think it's Terraology is my favorite. I got it pulled up because I was listening to it today, of course. Horizons Rapture EP. That would be the one that I would suggest everybody listen to. But yeah, the Physics House Band, Horizons Rapture. It's absolutely amazing.
Awesome. And what about you, Austin?
That's so hard. I have quite a bit. I'm probably the most odd one out of anyone in the group. I always tend to lean more towards like the as extreme and like technical like death metal stuff. And I mean, not that other people don't like it, but yeah, lately I've been listening to stuff like there's a couple Swedish metal bands I really love. One's called Vildhjarta. Um, and then one of their members has another band called Humanity's Last Breath. Those are two of my favorite bands lately. Also been listening to a lot of like Archspire and Alluvial and like the Faceless, like those kind of tech death bands. Um, but yeah, I would say let's do Vildhjarta. And they have a song. Oh, I don't even know how to pronounce it. Let's pick a different one. Let's just do Shadow. Shadow by Vildhjarta. It's an older one, but I really, really love this band.
Awesome. So that's Austin's pick. Here's Vildhjarta. And that was Austin's pick from Wake, Vildhjarta. Interesting trivia, actually, for both of you. Vildhjarta have actually played here in India. They played a college music festival, I think, close to a decade ago. And trust me, I was more surprised than anyone else that they actually managed to get like this band from Sweden down. But I think this was like the peak of gent or whatever you want to call it, tal as they call it, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm envious. I don't know that I might be wrong, but I don't know that they've ever come to the United States.
Yeah, that's
But
interesting. I don't know. Something for everyone to kind of check out. But
uh,
thanks so much, Brittany, Austin. It's been great speaking to both of you. Uh, any final words for everyone tuned in?
Yeah, thank you so much, Peter, for having us. We really, really appreciate it. Um, but yeah, everyone, please check out the new record. We've got our official online merch store up. It's wake.bigcartel.com. We literally make all the merch ourselves and sell it all ourselves. So, it's always a good way to support us is through there. And then, of course, you can find us on social media. But again, thank you so much, Peter, for having us. It was a real pleasure.
yeah,
Uh,
thank you so much. It's been an honor. Yeah, the only thing I'd say is whenever anyone's ready to listen to the album, set the time aside, get yourself a nice like listening environment, and just sit back and close your eyes and let it take you on the journey.
awesome. Those are great words to end this chat. Thanks so much again, guys. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And that was Brittany and Austin from Wake. Do check out the Return to Magik. It's a great album. I really enjoyed diving into the music and kind of getting lost into it. So, like Austin said towards the end, just tune out for an hour or so, tune into their album, and just get lost in it. If you've reached this part of the episode, hit subscribe or follow on whichever podcast platform you're listening to this episode on. Leave me a rating on Spotify. All these little things really help. And if you want to know when the next episode out, I've got quite a few interesting guests planned. Follow me on Instagram or X. I'm Trendcrusher. That's all from me. I'll see you all very soon. Cheers.